And and per the both unspoken and written agreement that I've made with Captain Torres multiple times in the past, when we are fortunate enough to have him here, we juggle the schedule to take as little of his time as possible because we always seem to take more time than we plan of the captain's time, anyways. So, with that, obviously, welcome, Captain Torres. If there's anything that you wanted to specifically mention to the folks here, otherwise, obviously, there's always plenty of questions for our division captain as well. And once again, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed. I'm sorry I missed the last month. If it wasn't the last couple of months, it just things get hectic here right around 7 o'clock. Nonetheless, I wanted to tell you that I'm very happy to be back. I like being a part of this presentation, I like being a part of this meeting. And I feel like I'm starting to get to know everybody, especially with all the, it seems like we have the arena safety meetings just about once a month. And I see a lot of the same faces, and I'm very pleased to actually start putting faces and names together. Thank you. So I'm looking at these stats, and I have to be honest, my portal for crime analysis, for what I use for pulling crime signatures, crime patterns, down. It's been down for a couple of weeks, and for whatever reason, we cannot get it back up. However, I do go to I go to SJPD.org, and I go to crime mapping. And under crime mapping, if I scroll over to the Shasta-Hanchett neighborhood, I can get a real good indication of what crime trends are occurring. Those are documented incidents of police activity, meaning they are at some point going to be either stored for information for intel purposes, or they're routed over to the district attorney's office for some degree of prosecution. You look at our neighborhood, and I think we're pretty fortunate to be not necessarily untouched, but I think we are relatively, let me put it this way, we're in a better way than a lot of other neighborhoods. Specifically, if you look at our Buena Vista neighbors, just south of us, there's a lot more small time crime that's occurring over there. And like I always say to every neighborhood association, what happens to my neighbor impacts us as well. So I can just really briefly go over those crime trends and hope to see that we don't see them bleed over. We see a lot of graffiti. A lot of gang graffiti, which is usually indicative of an uptick in gang crime shortly after. Well, we started seeing the trends of more gang graffiti in Willard about 6 months ago, which really didn't coincide with any bump in gang activity within that neighborhood. However, on the peripheral neighborhoods, where north versus south tend to heat up, tend to battle each other, it's getting impacted, and it's getting more and more busy, and it's even becoming more significant and more violent crimes. I would guess that everybody is familiar with the Valley Fair shooting that occurred about 2 weeks ago. The Valley Fair shooting certainly was blue versus red without question, and most of these are high school aged kids. Go to Westmont, Del Mar. I've heard that some of them go to Boynton, and then the last one would be Prospect. But the troubling thing for me as an old man is that we're starting to see this impact not only the junior highs, but also the elementary schools. And a lot of the names are involved are the same names, incident after incident. It doesn't directly impact Shasta-Hanchett. However, Valley Fair is what, less than a mile away from you? So it does impact us. Let me just talk about that real quick, and then I'll just move on. That was a Santa Clara Police Department jurisdiction case. San Jose responded. I think we did a real fine job to assist them. I think we had real good video and real good evidence. But the next day, I think our units did an outstanding job identifying all of the players, locating their schools, conducting searches where public safety was concerned, and essentially wrapping it up nice and neat for for our Santa Clara investigators. They were great participants and great partners, but being able to put something that together was a show of strength for our gang intel, our court liaison units, our partnership with Santa Clara Police Department, and our patrol officers in general. But that seems to be the peak, our peak of gang activity. And my fear is it just seems like there's always a one-up, an escalation of. And the problem with the players being juveniles, they are soon released after incarcerated. So I'm keeping an eye on that. Our gang teams, our special operations are over there often, and those neighborhoods are impacted. So you may see them driving through your neighborhoods as well. Just be aware that's what our trend is, and that's what we are trying to safeguard against, especially when it impacts neighbors and not just the gang players. Okay, let me transition real quick. A lot of people are very interested in two things. I'm going to touch on one of them. A lot of people are interested in redistricting, police redistricting. I don't have a lot of information on that, to be perfectly honest. That's done at our capacity. It's done by consultants, and it'll be presented to the police chief. A lot of intel is derived from our sources, but a lot of the community is as well. So we're not to the point on that, but we certainly are the point of interest. Second, organized retail theft. We got a lot of money from the feds. We got like $8 million or something, some crazy amount of money to purchase, maintain, and manage the flock camera system. Was it automatic license plate readers throughout the city? So we're going from a really small number, 100 something, to a very, very large number. 400, I think, is what our number is going to be, just shy of 400 once we're done. Those are dispersed strategically throughout the city. Certainly, we use the organized retail theft as our nexus. Nonetheless, I think we have placed them strategically so we can manage crime patterns in and out of the city, regardless of location. It's not specific to malls. Those license plates the readers are awesome. And I can promise you, every night our helicopter goes on about 3 or 4 different events that are initiated by the flock camera system, and we've had just a monumental amount of success. If I had more officers to deal with it, man, we'd be in a good way. But I'll take what I can get, and I think those are, when we talk about leveraging technology, this is a perfect example of, and that is a direct impact from the ORC, but it also is a benefit to our neighbors, our community. It does create a higher safeguard of community safety. All right, I don't want to eat up too much time. So Ed, anything you can answer?
No, obviously, thank you for that download. The one piece of information I did get from someone, there was a meeting earlier this week for folks about the redistricting, and it was essentially, the majority of the meeting was the consultant essentially asking attendees what they thought about policing in general. So kind of people pointed out that it was not necessarily what they expected, the meeting that I think was this past Thursday. Sandy had a good question. Can you give an example of a recent organized retail theft target?
The biggest? Oh gosh, they happen all the time. I'll tell you what I see in crime trends. We see them all the time. They're smaller by comparison to what we saw, a year ago, 2 years ago, when they would take over large stores. The last one that I saw was, I don't even know the name of the stores. My wife would know. It's something like Gucci, Louis Vuitton. It's one of those. Is Prada one of them? Maybe it was a Prada, where they took $150,000 worth of purses and with an 8-man grab, and they took off from Valley Fair to awaiting cars. That's the last big one that I really got the screws tightened on to me on. Other than that, we're seeing Westgate get hit a lot by a lot of the same players that return. Westgate is such an easy target because they have so many points of egress to major intersections. They have a parking lot that is nearly adjacent to the front door. And they have some stores that have a high dollar amount per item. So those are getting hit very often. So Westgate was one of the first areas to receive our flock cameras.
Interesting. Okay.
Does that answer that question? I know that's kind of maybe looking for something specific, and I don't know how to answer that specifically.
Well, no, that's a good point. And I think kind of, so more recently, kind of the organized thefts that you have been seeing, have they been smaller shops or kind of smaller instances? That sounds like it's less high profile ones, but an increase in numbers.
Yes, I think that's a perfect explanation. It's a great explanation of how I see things. When we have manning, we have officers, part-time officers at Valley Fair, Santana Row. They are doing a couple nights of patrol at Westgate Those are my areas. Those are my big malls, right? So they're starting to see those patterns when large numbers of groups of people come in with cars waiting. Our officers go out and make direct contact immediately on them. So once that was kind of identified, what we're seeing now is ones and twos that are going in. They're going in masked up. Their hoods are usually up. They'll make it into the mall and make it out. But let's also recognize that the malls are doing business completely different. They're letting their customers in one by one. So I think across the board, retail, we're seeing a different means of conducting business.
Interesting. Okay. Chris, did you have a question?
Yes.
There you go.
I was just gonna comment on the the gang graffiti is yeah, I noticed that recently in the neighborhood, particularly I guess the Norteño number 14 tags around the neighborhood. There's one right now actually at the underpass on the Alameda. I did report it, but I think I need to report it again because I think they missed it when they did the cleanup. So that's just if you guys are unfamiliar with what the gang tags are, they're like the I think it's 13 and 14 in Roman numerals. Would you say that's right, Randy Torres? And there's actually, yeah. So if you see those, please report those or email me or the SHPNA board or something, and we'll report them and get them, because they will. Graffiti team will make those a priority and clean those up quickly if they're reported. My other question was, I noticed recently I saw some guys out installing a camera at Sonol and the Alameda on the traffic lights there, and I was wondering, is that the I'm not sure if you would know, but are those like the traffic or the license plate reader cameras, or
Likely, if it's a recent install, those would likely be your cameras. Yes.
yeah, okay. And are they only used for reading license plates, or can they be used for like surveillance, or if a crime happens, you can collect video from them, or is it only just license plates?
Only license plates, only stills. The DOT traffic cameras that are on top of our lights, those can actually record and they can do lifetime. However, we are very conscientious of what our public expectations are, and they won't allow us to record, and it's probably for privacy. That's probably we're at a good place right now. However, I think that's going to change over time as people's perceptions and expectations change as well.
Interesting.
It's a guess of mine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I have a question.
Yeah, Carol.
Oh, good. Yes, thank you. I was wondering, you're talking about the gangs and the teenagers in particular just getting booked and then released and booked and released. How often, a couple of questions, like how often does that happen until something actually happens to the child? And what is the parents' responsibility when it comes to their repeated offenses?
Okay, well, that's going to be kind of case by case, right? With the parent, I can't really speak for their parents, but the one that was troubling to me was the kid that shot at Valley Fair, and he was released a couple days later. Released a couple. I think his name. It's his name D. I can't remember the name. Anyhow, the other partner, he was also arrested. So we have both players in custody. I think the other one was being held. So I don't know what actions or what specifically what triggered a hold, a stay, because once they enter the juvenile system, that's basically it's no longer in San Jose's hands. So I can't answer for that.
Yeah, right. Prosecutors. Okay.
It's frustrating, even as police officers always make the joke, you make an arrest, and by the time you even start writing the report, they're releasing them from the front door of main jail with the ticket. I think juveniles are the same, and there's just a new policies in place, and how they conduct business is different. And I'm gonna save comment on that one, but little gangsters running around. I think we're seeing an escalation in tactics and their activities, and it's becoming more violent. It's becoming it's spilling out into the streets where the gang graffiti not only it's not a message, it also impacts the neighbors as well, the neighborhoods and the parks. So I don't know if there's going to be a change soon, but that's what
becoming more violent is becoming more violent during the robberies or the thefts, or at another time? And what type of violence are you talking about?
Stabbing, shootings.
Mm,
It started with fights. We started off with fights in the high schools, so it's escalated to shootings at Valley Fair. And if you just think of the impact that you could have had of shooting at Valley
yeah,
Fair, not only are you shooting at somebody, what about you're at a mall? You could
yeah.
have hit somebody. You could have hit a mother, a child, a father, a husband. So many things could have gone wrong. So that disconnect exists, and that's the scary thing that I think that we are seeing. That for me, I'm starting to see things escalate, and I hope that we can get a cap on this right away.
Thank you.
Other questions for the captain? In the momentary pause here, I'll put my plug in the hopes that sometime between 10 and 12 on Saturday, February 3rd, the captain's available, because I know at the annual meeting, hearing from SJPD is always,
Yeah,
honestly, far more popular than hearing me blather on. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that is always the one of the primary things people come to hear. So
Did you send me an invite on that, Ed?
I did, but actually on my schedule starting tomorrow is to send everybody reminder invites.
Shasta Handshake annual meeting.
Yep.
Got it.
February 3rd. Yep. Yeah, don't feel bad, because last year the mayor finally said that he was coming. I think he responded in the affirmative 24 hours before the meeting. So Sandy had mentioned where the juveniles getting weapons.
Oh, if you follow our statistics, you'll find that our numbers for gun seizures are probably at an all-time high. And I say that all probably because this year and last year they're in competition with each other. Every good gang has a connect that can manufacture Glock type firearms. They call them P80s because they send them 80% complete, and with a simple drill and a die, you can finish the manufacturing and purchase the rest of the parts through the mail. So they're very easy to get. They're unregistered. They're traded around. They're protected as a commodity. They're handed from person to person. And I will be honest, the gangs are very, very organized. So we talk about high school kids, but their gang resources extend the age range. So they have a lot available to them for the benefit of their gang, unfortunately.
Chris, did you have another question?
I do. I was one of my topics that I can't seem to let go is the homeless encampment at the Safeway at the bus stop. And I thought since we have the D6 representative here and the police representative here at the same time, maybe we could discuss that. You know, it seems like there's a lot of, like, I don't know, finger pointing there both ways or whatever, or some disconnects there. So maybe we could get some perspective on what can be done about that. And what I mean is, I hear sometimes that the store needs to do something to get the police involved, or that but then sometimes I hear maybe from the police that they can't really do anything about it because of city policy or whatever. I don't know. So, and actually right there at that site is where I saw a very large, X4 tag at the bus stop where the encampment is. And I see when I go by there, and I do go by there a lot because I use that store and I use the Amazon Dropbox, and I charge my car there at the charging stations. And there's a lot of bicycles coming and going at night from that spot, staying for very short amounts of time and leaving. And anyway, so I'm just curious for an update on that one.
So Captain, the last time I spoke to the person who is a manager, I believe, at Safeway, we had told him that he needed to call SJPD to remove the person from their property, right? Because they were trespassing and staying. So code had spoken to them. Our office had spoken to them. I think one of your sorry, not your captains, one of your police officers had spoken to the manager as well. I'm not sure if they decided to move forward with that, but it has been reported to code enforcement. I'm not sure if code enforcement has given them a ticket or if they gave them, like a grace period, if that's what they need to do. But that's where we had left off on our end.
Yeah,
I don't think it's code enforcement because it's private property. A representative for Safeway has to be there. It looks like my sergeant emailed me back a response after he met with him. It looks like it was on December 5th. He says he contacted the original RP, who was not the RP, excuse me, is not the Safeway representative. The Safeway representative needs to come to the store to represent the store or its representative for the trespass. He left a phone number, a case number, and he gave him a cell number. And that's the last I've heard of it.
Right. And on our end, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, that means the officer gave that contact information to the folks at the store.
Yeah.
And they also have my contact information as well.
Yeah, the managers at that store seem to change pretty quickly. Like the guy that's in the encampment has been there longer than all the managers. They keep changing every time because sometimes when I'm in there, if I see the manager, I'll ask them for an update, but they usually just say, they don't want to really talk about it, and I understand that, or they say that, like, I don't know, some corporate Safeway is dealing with it or something like that. It just, and there is and I forgot to mention, but Diana mentioned there is at one point it was suggested that the way to handle it is to open a code enforcement thing, but that doesn't seem to go anywhere. I don't know.
Code enforcement can't do it because it's private property.
Well,
They can only issue like a ticket for a violation.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think code enforcement's going to remove the encamp or the person, or and hopefully get the person help or whatever. But you would think if there's a code enforcement and they're not following the code, there should be some repercussions to that, and that would make them motivated to deal with it.
And just to answer Sandy's question in the group chat, the encampment itself is usually on the property of Safeway, not the bus stop itself. So it's a jumping the line back and forth, right? Because VTA has gone out there and they have said, hey, this isn't on our property, it's behind it, so the property owner has to abate.
Yeah, it's right up against the building and the bus stop, and it overflows into the bus stop, and there's a lot of people hanging out there that hang out in the bus stop. And my daughter uses the bus, but luckily she doesn't use that bus stop. But if she needed to use that bus stop, I would ask her not to use it because I don't think it's a safe place. So, and I first started asking about it and reporting like homeless concerns and whatnot. It's been over 6 months now, and it's been there longer than that. So I don't know. I don't know if there's some action. It doesn't seem that Safeway, for whatever reason, isn't doing whatever they need to do to send the message that to have the situation resolved.
The management at the ACE, when I've talked to them, that it is to a certain extent, unfortunately, similar with some of their issues, that these individual franchisees or individual stores have to elevate it to either the property owner or to corporate, who then has to contact the property owner and back down. And the kind of candid comment that one of the employees at the ACE pointed out to me is they have insurance for a lot of this stuff. They would rather not devote the time to deal with it. They would rather honestly just kind of ignore it. That corporate doesn't want to spend the time to deal with it, so they kind of punt or pocket veto it and just don't do anything about it.
Yeah, it probably has to go through their legal counsel and et cetera,
Right.
and so forth. And it's a bureaucracy that doesn't seem to be getting anything done. Now, and the way I look at it is it's putting a lot of onus onto Safeway who is a business in the community, serving the community, to, I don't know. I mean, they probably have to spend $30,000, have their lawyers look over the whole thing before they send something to the police. It's not welcoming to business in San Jose, you know what I mean? To have to go through all this rigmarole. I mean, they have told me before that they have contacted the police before. And what I was told by one manager was, you know, they moved out one encampment, but another guy came in and popped up. And to be honest, their staff was afraid of this person and they didn't want to confront them, which I understand. And so they don't mess with them. And, you know, and I mean, if you're a manager of a Safeway, why do you want to go get involved with maybe a dangerous person or whatever? And
Yeah.
one of the managers told me that somebody from corporate came and tried to go out there and talk with them, and the guy basically just scoffed at them and said, you know, like kind of, you know, like basically, why would I leave, you know?
Yeah, a Beautify SJ is the department within the Parks Department that actually abates the encampments, right? If it's on private property, for example, Valley Water, you know, that's a public domain in a kind of way, but Valley Water has to be the one to initiate contact with BSJ and tell them, hey, we need this encampment abated, right? This is a little bit different. Maybe Valley Water is not the best example to compare this to, but because it is on private property, they need permission from the property owner to abate.
Now you're telling me that if they went in and they asked the store manager, do you have permission to abate that encampment? The store manager would say no.
Sorry, repeat that.
If somebody from the city of San Jose went into the store and talked to the manager and said, we're ready to abate that encampment, do you want us to do it? You think they would not give them permission?
Yeah. Well, Beautify SJ is unfortunately not proactive. They are reactive at this moment in time. You know, they have a lot of encampments on city property that they, you know, have to take care of. Not to say that this isn't, you know, like a priority for them, but they have a list, right? A list of encampments that are easier to abate, easier to go and clean. So if the property owner doesn't reach out to Beautify SJ or the police, but again, it wouldn't be Beautify SJ's job. It would be the property owner's job to have SJPD help them, you know, remove them for trespassing. It wouldn't be Beautify SJ anyway. That's only if it's on on public property. So we can go out there and remove stuff that's on the sidewalk, impeding the sidewalk, or the walkway. That's one of Beautify SJ's abatement policies so far. So that they could do, right? And we've reported it to Beautify SJ in the past, and we've reported it to Homeless Concerns, which does outreach for the housing department. But as we know, you know, you can go and clean, and then a day later it's there again. And by that time, Beautify SJ has a list of encampments they have to abate or that are on the list. So it's a situation, it's a cycle, right? They have to go to the next encampment, clear it out, and then same thing. So yes,
Right.
Liana, I see your hand up. I don't know if it's for me or
I'll
for the
just say
captain.
one last question from Liana.
No.
Assuming it's for the captain. If not, this is a conversation we can have when we're not holding the captain's time hostage. So do you have a question for the
agree, yeah.
captain?
No, I'll defer. It was regarding if the homeless outreach, what excuse me, if homeless outreach has talked to us as far as what the steps that have taken and what the response was from the individual. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a moment.
Yeah, so Homeless Concerns has gone out there and they've talked to the individual. Sometimes when they go out there, the person's not there. So then, you know, they can't talk to anyone, so they leave. And then by the next time they come, it's up to the person to engage with them. What Homeless Concerns does is provide resources, right? They don't have the power to abate. Only Beautify SJ has the power to abate. So Homeless Concerns provides resources, tries to talk people into getting housing. Some people are distrustful of the services.
Diana, what I meant is, yeah, I know that part, but as far as what has been the response from the person, do they just like leave me alone? I don't want to talk to you. Are they open to hearing options, or have we gotten any kind of feedback from that aspect?
It's varied. In the past, they said, one time when they went, they said they didn't find anyone. The next time, they said that they couldn't engage the individual, so the person wasn't willing to talk to them. The next time they went, so it's been a couple of times that they've gone out there, right? So what they try to do is build a relationship and then try to get them to trust, and then eventually find them some type of housing. But for now, those are the responses that we've received, and I think Chris has. I'm pretty sure you've been included in those when they reply to both of us. But anyway, so we will continue to ask Beautify SJ if something's impeding the sidewalk. But until now, what I've been told is it's the property owner or the manager that needs to ask to enforce the trespassing violation.
And if the gentleman starts to do something like disturbing another person, any kind of a assault kind of thing, that's an SJPD issue at that point then, correct?
It would, well, Captain, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, an assault, absolutely.
I mean, any kind of harassment of the people at the bus stop or any of that sort of nature, correct?
Harassment, we're gonna have to, I need more specifics. That's a broad term. If it's just words, I don't know. Until it becomes a disturbance or a violent reaction. 415 disturbance is what we call it.
Any kind of threatening action then, okay.
But then we would need a private person's arrest, because that would have to be done in the officers present. That's a misdemeanor.
All right. Obviously, as always, Captain, thank you for your time. We look forward, like I said, I'll email you the link about the annual meeting as well. And the captain, anybody who's gone to the CSE meetings, as Chris and others can attend to, the captain has been very generous with his time at those meetings, as he has been here as well. So obviously, thank you for that, Captain. And
what's CSE? What does that stand for?
The Citizens Advisory Committee. That's the acronym for the Arena Hotel meetings.
Right on. I think a big victory for the Arena hotels that they're considering. Well, somebody said, hey, let's not call this an Arena hotel. Let's call this Alameda Safety. I think those are good things.
Well, the number of people that have commented that they have seen substantive improvements through incremental changes, it is now becoming a broader kind of what can we do along the Alameda as a whole, which I think is beneficial for everybody.
And I think that's the importance of these meetings. That's how I see it. This isn't my background, but this is a perfect example of how it's working. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you, Captain.